On Friday night, if you recall, I began by stating on behalf of St. Mary's Parish in Westville, Illinois, I welcome you all to this Faith and Science Retreat weekend. What you may not know is that at the very beginning, we had a select target audience of bishops, Catholic bishops. My thinking was that as bishops, they are tasked to be the first teachers of their diocese. And so if we teach the teachers, well, then the Vatican Observatory Foundation's outreach would be greater and better known. We got 3 responses from bishops. Thank you, but I'm busy. So we opened it up to priests and religious. But then God had other plans. He wanted you here this weekend. And I'm so glad he did. So give yourselves a nice hand. Okay. Yay. One of our speakers is Jewish, and Friday night was the beginning of the Jewish Sabbath. So we had a near-kosher meal, all but Rabbi's blessing, for our charcuterie. Charcuterie. I'm learning all kinds of new words. I don't know what it looks like, but there's something called a Russian tea cake. So Diane, are you here? Please, Diane, please stand up. This is Diane Hackley, and she offered help, and I took it. I said, otherwise you would have had Casey's Pizza Friday night. So thank you so much, Diane, and your daughter Morgan. She ran out to the Amish restaurant and brought the food back and set it up. So besides the parish-like outreach, my hope is to showcase the Vatican Observatory. And I'm so proud of their mission and the Jesuit commitment to this science. I think they deserve a big hand. So let's... I want as many Catholics to know about it as possible. I'm sorry. In some ways, this weekend is a road show of the Vatican Observatory Foundation, Acme Outreach. Just think, I think Brother Guy left, but Brother Guy, you could go around the world matching up solar and lunar eclipses for a weekend. Wouldn't that be cool? And giving talks, okay? And by the way, Brother Guy, the next solar eclipse in the continental U.S. is in 2044, okay? It'll be going over Montana, North Dakota, into Canada. And Calgary is dead center on the path of totality. So if you see Brother Guy, invite him and tell him I'll buy him a Stetson. Okay? I placed an article in your folder on lunar eclipses, and he goes into a great deal of interest, particularly how they found evidence of an earthquake in the sedimentary layer at the Dead Sea. And they have a picture of it. And so what it basically looks like, the sediment is looped over, okay? And they can judge that, and the age for that is between year 30 and 33. So from eclipses of the sun to the moon to the famous Star of Bethlehem, God uses the heavens to both proclaim his glory and to emphasize important times and perhaps important warnings. I know you heard about the eclipse of today going over 7 cities named Nineveh. While it is true that the eclipse will happen over these cities, but most of them are partial. Only 2 are total eclipse in the path of totality, here in Indiana and in Ohio. And speaking of Nineveh, there was an eclipse near there on June 15th, 763 BC. And I'm going to butcher the name, but it's called the Sagali eclipse. And what it's known for is that they're able to precisely date historical events around that, and it's used as a touchstone for ancient historical events. And there's also a connection, it seems, to the prophet Jonah for the repentance of Nineveh to his preaching. To add to the freakiness of Nineveh, I don't know how many of you know about the prophecies of St. Malachi. St. Malachi wrote 200 different sayings for future popes, and they've been matched up. And the saying for Pope John Paul II was, and my Latin is there, but De labore solis. De labore solis. Variously translated, of the eclipse of the sun, or labor of the sun. When Karl Wojtyła was born on May 18th, 1920, there was a total solar eclipse. It was over Australia, but that's still pretty cool. But when you consider, there's a total eclipse once a year, somebody's going to be lucky. Okay. But I have here, cue the TV theme for X-Files. On one chart, I read the longest total eclipse happened on May 10th, AD 96. It lasted for 6 minutes and 47 seconds. Ours will be just over 4 minutes, and it is a part of the Saros cycle 139. This coming year in October, there will be an annular eclipse taking place over South Pacific. There was an annular eclipse last October over the west. Okay. If you look up here, this is the famous picture called the pale blue dot. Carl Sagan had some influence. I think it was the Pioneer 10, but I'm not sure. He asked them to turn and take a picture of behind. And they did okay, they took a picture. Well, it turns out there's a pale blue dot right there. That's Earth. That's our home. Now, some people quote Bill Nye, the science guy here, and he says, we're just a speck and a speck and a speck. But then he goes on and says, but we can think about this, okay? We can think about all that. The first American total eclipse happened on June 24th, 1778, over Philadelphia, and was recorded by astronomer David Rittenhouse and entered into the American Philosophical Society's annuals. I made a copy of it, an entry. I don't think it says here I have it in your folder. We didn't get that far. I don't think you have it, but just pull it up. Okay. It's really hard to read because it's photocopied off of parchment or whatever, and it's written in script, and where the S's are F's. Okay, so we need somebody like a doctor or a dentist. You don't need to translate this entry because it's pretty cool. Okay, before President Jefferson became president, he heard about this eclipse and he was most desirous to see it, but cloud cover prevented him. I know. General George Washington, as Continental Commander of the Army, was told about an eclipse, a partial eclipse, and he thanked the astronomer and had his officers warn his soldiers lest they get, frightened by it and say, we're losing, because they were losing. We barely won that revolution by God's grace, okay? And I mean barely. So what is it about the moon that is so special? I'm not sure how this picture was taken, but it's cool, okay? There's the moon in the forefront, and we learned from other talks that the moon is 400 times smaller than the sun, and the sun is 400 times further away, making the total eclipse such a unique phenomenon. But how did the moon get there? Well, there's another cool picture of the moon going over the Earth. This is a famous Apollo 10? No, Apollo Earthrise. I'm not sure which, Apollo 8, I think. They took the famous Earthrise photo. There's the big blue marble. If you ever want to find this, just search big blue marble. Here's a cool one with a little detailed of the moon. Speaking of which, I buy things on Kickstarter, and I think they're cool, and And so some of you bought some of my stuff. I'd like to hang on to this. This is a concrete model of the moon's surface, okay? With all the, look at all the little dimples of impact craters on there. So if you want to take a look at this, it's ideally to be hung this way so you kind of see the shadow across it. But I'd like to hang on to this, but this, if you want to come up and take a look at it later, do so. Maybe if somebody, Dr. Graney, the large flat area, that's a lava flow, right? That's a basalt lava flow. That's the big one at the top. That's not a crater. He's gone. So, Dr. Cookie, the big crater at the top, the round, that's a lava flow from a volcano, right?
You mean like the Mars? Yeah, so I think that's what you're. Sorry.
The Mars. That's okay. When they were making maps, the huge, yeah.
Yeah, that's like a big crater in the lava flow.
The lava flow flattened it out. When they were making maps, before they had the telescope, they just had eyesight, you know, and they were trying to figure it out, you know, because they had, the Earth shines, the light from the Earth shines onto the moon. And so the speculation was that that is water on the Earth, on the moon, and that's where they started calling it Mars, okay, a sea. Okay, I'm mispronouncing it, yeah. Mare. Now, this is a colorized version of it. I just thought it was cool. All the impact. This is not Keck, is it? No, but this might be Mauna Kea. We don't know. Okay, it's just a cool picture. Okay, okay. This is where I did my novitiate. This is a place called Holy Hill, Wisconsin. The second highest hill in Wisconsin, built by Bavarians. Okay, it's a beautiful, beautiful site. You want to come, if you'll go there, approach it from the south, and you'll see the church. The first highest hill in Wisconsin is Timms Hill. Okay, and they're not much higher. But now, I mentioned I was in Tucson for the first workshop from the Vatican Observatory Foundation, and they took us on field trips. Again, I want to encourage you to go on, if you can, not this year, 2 years, to go there, okay? And they took us to a field trip to the Planetary Science Institute, okay? And they had all the scientists, and NASA uses them for all their stuff, okay? Not all of it, but for planets, okay? Even Pluto, okay? And so we're walking around, and they're in their offices, and they brought us to this office, and I don't know who was who, but then he was redecorating the wall, and he had hit a plaque on the floor. And we were talking to him. I said, "What's this plaque about?" And he picks it up, and he says Royal Society on it. And I said, "Oh, you're him." The other priest with me didn't know what I was talking about. I watch a lot of Nova, okay? And he is the one that came up with the impact theory of something hitting the early Earth and forming the moon. And he did the science and was awarded from the Royal Society recognition and published in there. And he's holding up his article. Is that backwards? No? Okay. He's holding up his article from the Royal Society. And this is Dr. William Hartman. Dr. William Hartman. And I thought it was so cool. I mean, I'm kind of a geek when it comes to science. I had him autograph a book, and the other priests were probably rolling their eyes, but I thought it was cool. Okay. The Great Impact Theory is a theory. It's been given a name, and I'm going to spell it. I don't know how to pronounce it. T-H-E-I-A. Does anybody know how to pronounce that? Thea? T-H-E-I-A. And basically, 5.5 billion years ago, an object the size of Mars impacted the early, perhaps molten Earth. Recent computer models, after tens of thousands of simulations, are showing that an impactor theory is not only possible, but that the moon formed very quickly after that event. We're talking like months. And so when it happened, if it happened, something struck the Earth, the mostly molten Earth. Earth has an iron core. Some of that either plugged off the back end or was swiped off it and then caught in a gravitational wave with the Earth, and that became the moon. And it's called the impactor theory. Now, as to the naming of this theory, Dr. Hartman is opposed to it because it's only a theory. Okay, he says naming something that may not have happened doesn't make sense. The name comes out of a Greek mythology for one of the Titans. The moon has an iron core that is still being studied. There's still conflicting things whether it has one or not, but they came back. The astronauts came back from the moon with all kinds of rocks. And of all the rocks, this is the most famous. Okay? And it's called a trochilite. I'm not pronouncing it right, but trochilite. And according to Wikipedia, this was formed 18 kilometers into the center of the moon. And by this, they can tell that the moon formed from a dynamic, I'm looking at Dr. Cookie, from a dynamic plasma spin, right? It wasn't an iron core, but it was a plasma. Okay, you can read the Wikipedia article. Okay. A really popular book, recent days, years, is Rebecca Boyle's book, Our Moon. I'm getting some of this from her. The moon is slipping away from us, and it is slowing down. We know that from the laser, bouncing the lasers off the moon. She said it's moving away at the growth of our fingernails. So she says about 600 million years from now, the moon will be so distant that it'll no longer eclipse the sun. Additionally, the distance between the Earth and the moon will be so great that the moon will no longer stabilize the tilt of the Earth, and the Earth will be permanently locked with our pole towards the sun. So no more seasons. Half the Earth will be baked in light, and the other half will be in darkness. But then Father Juan said, well, the sun will explode before then, so we don't have to worry about it. So don't worry. Okay. At one time, the Earth and the moon were very close, and the Earth was spinning a lot faster than it is now. And the moon's gravitational pull on the Earth gave us the tides, and I don't understand this next science, but the exchange of the moon going around the Earth, there's an exchange of energy that keeps the Earth's magnetic core active longer than it would have been without the moon. So I think that's pretty cool. By the way, if you don't know this, as of April 2nd, the moon has its own time zone. It was a presidential memorandum order, and I don't understand this, but 58.7 microseconds per day. So the scientists said the moon is such that the time is off for Earth time, and it needs its own time zone. And so President Biden, and it's called LTC for Coordinated Lunar Time. And that may not be as groundbreaking as Dr. Brenda Fry's presentation, but I think that's pretty cool. Okay. Einstein may have said this or not. I asked Brother Guy about it, and he said, we don't know. But he said something to the effect, I don't know what is more amazing, the vastness of the universe or man's ability to comprehend it. But whoever said it, I agree. Now this slide here is from the Griffith, I believe, Observatory, October 6, 1923. Again, you have to imagine yourself, back then, they didn't know what the stars were. They didn't have no idea. They just thought, well, it's more than our solar system. There's the galaxy that we're in called the Milky Way. But in 1923, Hubble took a picture. And this picture showed, VAR stands for veritable star. And you see the two dashes on the slide up on top and then down? There's a star in there. That's a variable star. And that told Hubble that there's more than just the Milky Way. There's other galaxies. Other galaxies. And so, so he was credited for the expansion of the universe. But then last year or the year before, the international, whoever comes up with these things, the International Astronomical Union, they said, well, actually, Father Lemaitre did the math, and he is to be credited along with Hubble. And so the expansion of the universe model is supposed to be called the Hubble-Lemaitre thing. So we should give Father Lemaitre a hand. And his birthday just happens to be the same as mine, July 17th. So he's kind of a patron saint for me. Okay. We saw this. This is what some people are seeing right. What time is it? Not quite right now, but this is what people are going to be starting to see if you're out in space. The shadow going over the earth. Now the shadow is always there. We know that, right? It just happens. The earth gets in the way. There's the famous picture of Lemaitre and Dr. Einstein. Faith and science. Found this out. The Bible is on the moon. Okay, so if you ever get asked, one of the scientists had a small little microfiche or microfoam of the Bible. And I guess those are all the little chapters. And so that's on the moon. So I thought you might, that's kind of cool. Okay. This is, I don't know if we'll see this, if anybody will have one of these on their telescopes, but this is there's a name for the film, and it goes over the outside of the telescope, and you can see the moon eclipsing the sun. This is cool. This is the stamp of the U.S. Mint, U.S. Postal Service, and it's called Cosmic Eclipse. And this picture came from the James Webb Telescope, and this is the present that was given to Dr. Brenda Fry. Anybody know what that is? The ninth planet. How did that get in there? Everybody can dream, okay? This is after Dr. James Cookie called me in October of 2017, and he says, I'm on to something big. I can't tell you, but I'm on to something big. Okay. Well, that turns out that his team controlled 15 of the 70 telescopes that day on August 17, 2017, and days after. They didn't find it right away. It took maybe like 48 hours. And a team from Chile actually found the light source. And Dr. Jeff Cookie told me, not only is this a confirmation of Einstein's theory of 1915, I got that wrong yesterday. His theory of relativity went earlier. His gravity wave started in 1915. And they found the light source. And Dr. Jeff Cookie, what is the name of the new science that it started?
You mean like gravitational? I don't know what you mean.
The combination of light and...
Oh, multi-messenger. Might be what you're thinking.
It's called multi-messenger astronomy. Brand new. Brand new. Isn't that cool? And so he was telling me all this stuff. I'm his pastor, his mom's pastor. I said, okay, we got to do something with this, okay? And so I came up with this granite bench that they're standing in front of it. Unfortunately, the light is behind there. But you can see the solar system. Yeah, it's there, okay. On the bench, okay. And on the back portion of the bench is Einstein and Lemaitre, Dr. Jeff Cookie's picture with his team, and then all the facts about LIGO, okay? And this is groundbreaking science. The detection of a light source for a gravity wave. And ask him about the future coming LIGOs that they're trying to plan, like between here and the moon. It's going to be so cool. Hang on to your hats, guys, okay? Oh, that's Gina. That's Jeff Cookie's sister. Okay. I love this picture. I just absolutely love this photo. You know, I grew up with science fiction. You hear about these things, you know, there's black holes, it's all theory, you know, and then they start finding things. And this is the first image, you can see on our laptop, the first image of a black hole. And that's her response. Her name is Katie Bauman, and I just love her response. Okay, that's science. Okay. This was compared, then the first simulation of a black hole, 1979, and then the first real image of a black hole, 2019. But within the last 2 weeks, 3 weeks, this is the newest image of a black hole. Isn't that cool? Some of you are lucky enough to get the spinners. By the way, the spinners are available. Okay, that have the. My background is in marketing. Okay, it has on the back side of it that image. Okay, the rest of it just has both sides the same with today's date that you were here. Okay, now we're going to transition. This weekend was faith and science. We got a lot of science. We're going to end on faith. This is the blood moon. This is from the prophet Joel, written about 200-300 years before Christ. It shall come to pass, I will pour out my spirit upon all flesh. Your sons and daughters will prophesy, your old men will dream dreams, your young men will see visions, even upon your male and female servants. In those days I will pour out my spirit. I will set signs in the heavens and on earth, blood, fire, columns of smoke. The sun will be darkened. The moon will turn blood red. Before the day of the Lord arrives, that great and terrible day, then everyone who calls upon the name of the Lord will escape harm. For on Mount Zion there will be a remnant, as the Lord has said, and in Jerusalem survivors whom the Lord will summon. And that was from the prophet Joel, whose name means Yahweh is God, and is one of the 12 minor prophets. Now before him, at this point I was going to go into the soliloquy of Henry V with the prologue actor, okay? And he's challenging the people in the theater. You have to work your minds. You got to imagine two massive armies coming together in this wooden O. Hear the clashing of the swords. Hear the horses. And so he's ginning up the audience to try to use your imagination for his play. And we have to do something like that going forward here. Because they were expecting what? They were expecting the Messiah, the anointed one, or in Greek, the Christ. Moses told them in Exodus, a prophet like me will the Lord send to you. You'll speak the very words of God. If you don't listen to him, and I'm paraphrasing this, watch out. It's really strong, okay? And so the Jews have been expecting the Messiah. And so prophetically, the Psalms, and there was a back in the 80s, not to be controversial here, back in the 80s, there's a big push to make the Psalms gender neutral. And the Pope said, no, it deals with Christ, with the anointed one. Okay, it's prophetic. And so down to the prophet Daniel, who prophetically gave a timeline apocryphally by months. And so this is all leading up to the time of Jesus. And the people studied this. It is speculated by the French Mariologist René Laurentin that the slight reference in the Gospel of St. Luke referring to John the Baptist, which reads, "The child grew and became strong in spirit. He was in the desert until the day of his manifestation to Israel." Not much there. John's born. Next thing you know, he's in the desert. And Father René Laurentin speculates that he lived in a celibate messianic community. They read Daniel. They said, this is, all the signs are coming together. And so that's where he speculated John the Baptist grew up. Something akin to the Essenes. So at the time, I mean, all this is coming up. There was messianic fever at the time of Christ. I mean, we're talking about people getting ready for the solar eclipse. One headline says, "Eclipse fever." Okay, but they were expecting it. Even so much when Jesus was dying on the cross, he says those words. It's either Greek or Hebrew or Aramaic. "Eli, Eli, lama sabachthani." I asked my roommate, who was a Semitic scholar, because somebody in the crowd says, "Look, he's calling on Elijah." So I said, "What's that about?" And he said, "Eli is the first letters of Elijah." Okay? And the prophecy was that Elijah would come first before the Messiah. And so somebody from the crowd says, "Oh, he's calling, this is the messianic mind. He's calling on Elijah. This is it." Jesus in St. Matthew's Gospel tells us, if you can accept it, John the Baptist is Elijah. Anyhow, the point is, we have to put ourselves in their sandals. That was a laugh line. We have to imagine ourselves in Jerusalem. March 19th at 1 o'clock, year 33. And guess what happened? Total eclipse. You think people talked about that? You bet. You bet. And then you had this big commotion. Jesus' triumphal entry into Jerusalem. And all the people coming to Jerusalem for the feast. I mean, every adult male was required to go to the temple 3 times a year for sacrifices. And so this is a huge event, the Passover. And surely their excitement must have matched our own. You know, what is this going on? I'm sure they didn't, I don't know if they had people from the Temple Foundation who were calculating the eclipse, but the Babylonians were doing it. You know that? Okay. So, you had the miracles of Jesus, the teaching in the temple, his arrest, the trial by night. People talk. When he died, a blood moon was on the horizon. Now, Jerusalem sits on a ridge up high. So if you've ever seen a full moon come up, it looks really huge, right? Okay. This is what they saw, the blood moon. Now, on Pentecost Sunday, St. Peter gave his first homily, book of Acts. And they were on the rooftop. And said others were scoffing, saying they have taken too much wine. And Peter says in his speech, Peter's speech at Pentecost, and Peter stood up with the 11, raised his voice and proclaimed to them, "You who are Jews, indeed all of you, staying in Jerusalem." A lot of Gentiles were coming and went to the temple. There was the court of the Gentiles. And when Jesus cleared out the money changers, Brian Petrie, Petrie, he was saying that was the court of the Gentiles. So he was clearing that out. You who are Jews, indeed, all of you staying in Jerusalem, let this be known to you and listen to my words. These people are not drunk, as you suppose, for it is only 9 o'clock in the morning. No, this was what was spoken through the prophet Joel. And then he cites, "It will come to pass in the last days, God will pour out a portion of his Spirit upon all flesh. Your sons and daughters shall prophesy, young men shall see visions, old men dream dreams. Indeed, upon my servant, my handmaids, I will pour out a portion of my Spirit, and they will prophesy. And I will work wonders in the heavens above," solar eclipse March 19th, "and signs on the earth below, blood, fire, earthquake, center, Dead Sea, maybe 20 miles away, epicenter. The sun shall be turned to darkness and the moon to blood before the coming of the great and splendid day of the Lord. And it shall be that everyone shall be saved who calls on the name of the Lord." And this goes back to Peter. "You who are Israelites, hear these words. Jesus the Nazarene was a man commended to you by God with mighty deeds, wonders, and signs, which God worked through him in your midst. As you yourselves know, you saw all this. This man, delivered up by set plan and foreknowledge of God, you killed, using lawless men to crucify him. But God raised him up, releasing him from the throes of death, because it was impossible for him to be held by it. For David says of him, I saw the Lord ever before me. With him at my right hand I shall not be disturbed. The sun shall be turned to darkness." Could be a reference to the solar eclipse. Others speculate sandstorm. They have them, or frequently they go up high in the atmosphere, it gets dark. But according to the NASA calculator, there was a solar eclipse March 19th, 33, just before 1 p.m. And it's identified with the Saros cycle 142. Our total eclipse is with the Saros cycle 139. And that happened on Good Friday, April 3rd of 33. The lunar eclipse occurred. Blood moon rising at sunset. This is from Psalm 8. How great is your name, O Lord our God, through all the earth. Your majesty is praised in the heavens, on the lips of children and of babes. You have found praise to foil your enemy, to silence the foe and the rebel. When I see the heavens, the work of your hands, the moon and the stars which you arrange, what is man that you should keep him in mind, mortal man that you care for him? Yet you have made him little less than a god. With glory and honor you crowned him, gave him power over the works of your hands, put all things under his feet, all of them sheep and cattle, yes, even the savage beast, birds of the air and fish that make their way through the waters. How great is your name, O Lord our God, through all the earth. Thank you. This is... Okay. My little niece, I said I heard her first sentence. What's that noise? This is her in the backyard, and they took a picture with the moon. So, thank you very much. Okay. I can take questions, but more than likely, I'm just going to defer to Dr. Jeff Cookie. So, if you have any questions. Solar. And I went to the NASA site, and you can plug it all in, and it comes up.
So March 19th and April 3rd, what were those?
March 19th is the solar eclipse.
Okay.
April 3rd was the lunar eclipse.
Okay. Jesus died on.
Yeah, the lunar eclipse happens relatively fast, like an hour and a half-ish. So when it was rising, it was already eclipsed. Okay. Yes?
And the epicenter was Jerusalem?
For the path of totality went over Jerusalem at just before 1 p.m. And I did get the Stellar app, so Stellarium app, and I looked it all. It took me a while, but I went back to that date and looked at it. It's there. It's there.
So, which date Jesus died on?
April 3rd.
April 3rd, what is the lunar?
Right. Any other questions? Should we do this again in 2044? 20, well, where is it going to be in 2027? To Spain. Father Juan is going to invite us to Spain. Okay. Because I can read your minds, by the way. I can read your minds because I know your thought right after you see the solar eclipse end. I know what you're thinking. I want to see another. I want to see another. They're so cool. Well, thank you so much. Okay.